Welcome to the Keeping It Real podcast by Real World Academy, where we hear from top educators, entrepreneurs, and creative thinkers on how to design your future. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Keeping It Real podcast by Real World Academy. We have the full leadership team here. I'm Domenico. We got Anthony, Garth, and Lincoln. And today we're just going to talk a little bit more about the origin story of Real World Academy and why we all got into this in the first place.
Yeah, part two.
Part two.
So, you guys started this, in your kitchens, right? No, that's not how it started. How did it start? How did it start, Domenico?
Should I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so originally the entire conception of Real World was when I was in medical school. And obviously I was not thinking about education, teaching education in medical school. I was worried about making sure that I could become a doctor. But in the course of where my medical school was, which was in urban Newark in New Jersey, the medical school kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. In other words, that it was kind of built in a historical neighborhood in Newark. They had basically raised a bunch of original buildings there and put up the medical school. And the medical school, as a response to the Newark riots, and that was part of its mission, was to bring a hospital to Newark. But so this school is sitting in the middle of Newark, and so there was a high school across the street, which was a magnet school that excelled in the sciences, but they had challenges with getting good mentorship for their students and having a real connection with the school, despite being across the street, literally across the street from the medical school. There was no crosstalk between the two institutions at all. And so one way or another, I became involved with the school and realized that, hearing from the teachers at the school that this connection wasn't there. And I'm like, well, that's a shame, because we have very eager to mentor medical students. Medical students, by definition, are very educated people. They like mentoring. They like teaching by design. And they're looking, and as part of medical school, you have to do service hours as well. So they're looking for something to do, and it's a shame. So we ended up connecting with a lot of help from some of my colleagues, we ended up connecting the medical students and the high school students, the ones that were specifically interested in science, and even the ones that weren't, because even the ones that weren't, just so they could see somebody who looks like them, who is not that much older than them, who was succeeding as a professional, semi-professional person, in grad school. And so it went really well. And so it was a combination of mentoring and tutoring. And
it went really well is an understatement. It blew up.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to talk more about the numbers and how many students you had within a very short period of time.
Yeah, that's true. Within a short period of time, like you said, we had over 100 medical students mentoring over 100 of the high school students. And
wow.
And Cory Booker recognized it in a tweet. It did really well, and it's still a long established tradition at the medical school now to do this, and I hope it continues. But so that's where we got our first taste of it. But again, that was as a organization and as part of my community service. It wasn't itself a standing organization yet, but the ideas for it started there.
And so around the same time that you were doing that, I was 7 years younger than you, so I was just starting high school, right? And so we would just talk casually about our frustrations, you being in medical school, me being in high school. And the strange thing that we came across is there was a lot of parallels there in terms of not necessarily your frustrations in medical school, but things that you went through in high school and college, on your journey to become a doctor. And so just naturally, we started kicking around ideas on, okay, so how can we improve this, high school system, and how can we incentivize students to kind of try out things earlier and maybe be able to know what they want to do earlier and have a clearer image of themselves by the time they graduate high school and are ready to either go to college or whatever. And so throughout the process of doing that, we came up with a rough schema for Real World Academy, and our initial moonshot ambition was to sell this model for academy style schooling that would allow students to engage themselves in a track that is aligned with their potential field of interest. And so this was all just conversation at this point.
Yeah.
And I think it was just conversation for a number of years until my junior year of high school. I got a call from my high school, Morristown High School, saying, you've been nominated to give an interview to see if you wanted to do a TEDx talk in Morristown. And I thought it was just like some fake school thing. So, yeah, I was a young hothead guy.
You got nominated to do a TED Talk. That's amazing.
Well,
I'll tell the story. Yeah, well, there's more. There's even more.
So I thought it was fake. I thought it was just like a fake school like exercise. So I went into it with a ton of confidence. And I was just like, I was sitting there at the table. My arm was like this. And I was talking like, oh, yeah, we got these ideas for education. And we're going to, reinvent the high school model. And
you were going against other, what you didn't say was you're going against other students, whereas I think they were brought on a little bit earlier.
I think it was like 40 other students.
There was 40 other students who were all pitching to get this one spot.
Yeah.
And they brought him on a little bit later, kind of like, oh, we should bring him in too. So you were a little bit less prepared.
I wasn't prepared at all. I thought it was fake. I thought it was fake, so I didn't prepare. So I'm just talking my game and all that. And, I thought it went well. I liked the two people who were conducting the interview. One of them ended up being Michael, our friend. But so then I kind of forgot about it for a few weeks. I get invited to the dude's house who's running it. So at this point, I'm like, all right, this is weird. I'm a high school kid. I'm going to some family's house for like some school activity. And then I get there and I realize, oh, this is legit. He's like preparing a TEDx event in Morristown. And he offered me the slot. And he told me, I got all these other speakers prepared, like professional people. There was one guy in agriculture, one guy in neuroscience, another guy who was a motivational speaker. And he said, I wanted to scope out the high school too to see if there's any local kid who might have something to say. And eventually he offered me the position. So within a span of a few weeks, I went from thinking I was going to help out with some school activity to being nominated to be a TED speaker. So I had a month to prepare, I think it was. And I was applying to college at the same time. So
basically you're a low achiever.
This was crazy, man. So it was my junior year. I was applying early decision to the Clive Davis Institute at NYU. It was the only school I wanted to go to. If I got rejected, I was just going to hustle in music and not go to college, maybe apply the following year.
And your mom was not happy about that decision.
Yeah, so wait, before we go there, what happened when you finally told your parents? When did you tell your parents you wanted to go to school for music?
They wanted me to go to school. I didn't want to go to college.
Okay, so when did you tell them that you would say, okay, I will go to school only if I go to Clive Davis?
It's all a blur. Let's see.
It was like a year or two before, I think.
So he was a junior?
Well,
must have been a junior.
Here's the full scope. Admittedly, it was a risky thing, and it was not necessarily a rational thing for me to do. But I was so hyper-focused on going to that school for a number of reasons that were very particular to me. And one point that I'd like to make is, yes, it was a risk. Yes, it was irrational, but I knew what I wanted at a very young age because I was allowed to explore that because of my parents. And so on one hand, I was taking a huge risk. On the other hand, I knew exactly what I wanted and I knew exactly how to do it. So I put all of my focus into getting to this hyper-specialized music school that was right by where I lived. It was in New York where I wanted to be. It was taught by the people who I wanted to get in with. I mean, it was like check off all the marks. Okay. That was the school. And so I made that my plan. And the advice that was given to me is, okay, if you want to go to this school, they offer a number of high school programs to kind of get a foot in the door and get to know the staff, see if it'd be a right fit for you. So I applied to the spring program, which I thought I would have been a shoo-in for, and I got rejected.
Wow.
I got rejected from it.
Okay.
And I was told, we couldn't fit you in. It wasn't a right fit for the spring program. Maybe you should apply for the summer program, which was kind of a more fully fledged thing where I was living there for a month and, I was dorming there. The spring program was satellite. So I applied for that and really put everything into the application, and I got in. This was the summer prior to the whole TED Talk insanity. So just to give some perspective. And so I went to the program feeling like a loser because I got rejected from the spring program. And I suppose that motivated me to really, really give it my best shot. And long story short, the summer program went really well. I really liked it. I made a lot of friends, and I made friends with the staff. And the final project for the program was to, amongst a small group of students, was to write and produce a song and present it at the end and describe what you did. And so my group had decided we're going to make 2 songs. We're going to go against the rules. And we're going to make a video presentation rather than a slideshow presentation.
Nice,
I didn't tell anybody. I didn't say, is this okay to do? How a lot of students are nervous. Like, oh, is it all right if I...
You ask for forgiveness, then permission.
Yeah, ask for forgiveness, not permission. So already I'm breaking every rule on the rubric. I'm doing 2 records. Right. I'm making a video. I'm ignoring the PowerPoint part of it. So...
No wonder we get along so well. That's the story of my life. I do what I want.
Rule breakers. But you communicate it in a way that's not destructive. So, or at least I try to do that. So we present this thing, and we don't tell any of the professors about it. And then by the end of the presentation, and this is like the big thing where the parents come out and, see the kids, it's like a showcase.
Sure.
And so we were the last group to present just by luck. And then by the end of it, the head of the program couldn't get a word in because the entire crowd was singing the chorus of the song over and over again because it was so catchy.
That's awesome.
So that's how I left the summer program. And so it gave me a bit of confidence in terms of only applying to this school. And after the presentation was over, the head of production, or one of the heads of production at the time, he's no longer at the school, was talking to my dad. And he was like, I can't really say anything outright, but we really hope Domenico applies. So it started out being a total moonshot, irrational decision. And then I ended up getting to a place where I knew I had a good shot when I actually had to hand the application in. So it wasn't as crazy as you might think, considering those very particular circumstances. So September comes around. It's my junior year of high school, and I get the TED Talk nomination. I got to get the early decision 1 application in a couple of months. And that includes the full creative portfolio. I had to do a ton of stuff. I had to make a song, make a video, make a creative resume, do like 4 essays.
That's right. Yep.
You know the process.
That's right.
So I was doing that. And at the same time, I had a month to prepare for the TED Talk. And so...
Not to mention your classwork.
Not to mention school, yeah. And I had a tough schedule, junior year of high school, So playing the whole AP game and all that.
Oh, he was AP too. Okay.
Sometimes, yeah. And so, yeah, I just used the fear, I guess, to propel me. And I rehearsed the TED Talk every single day in this room, as a matter of fact. And I put together the presentation. The title of the presentation was How to Destroy the Millennial Stereotype. I was really talking about Gen Z, but I didn't know that at the time. And I was just, using self-deprecating humor, admittedly. I was trying to prove a larger point that students don't know themselves, and it creates a very fragile existence and fragile intellectual economy. And let's try to figure out a better way for students to know themselves and know what they want so that they can contribute to the society at large and be happy and well doing it. And so that was the gist of the TED Talk. And basically I was talking about the early models of Real World Academy, how to mentor students to be the best versions of themselves. And so did the presentation in October. It went really well. It was all over the news in the local papers. I was the standout presentation. And that ended up on my college application too, because I had to deliver the application in November and I did the TED Talk in October. So I'm really thankful that the stars aligned there. And just from a philosophical standpoint, it set my life on a path towards, I'm going to lead by example because I'm following my passion and this is what my life is going to be, no questions asked. And I'm going to help others, achieve that same level of excitement and stability in their lives through Real World Academy. So it was a very intense time, but it really set us off in the right direction. And years later, after running a similar mentorship program in Morristown for a couple of years, I had met Garth because his son came out one day to help out. And I never told you this, Garth, but let's see, how do I put this?
Uh-oh.
Hold on, let me drink. Hold on. Sound like it's gonna be good.
So we're 4 years into doing the high school mentorship program in Morristown for free under the Real World Academy brand, but it was just because it was something that my friends and I wanted to do, with Kobe and Dan and Mateo and those guys. So then I get a cold call one day from this dude who was like, hey, I heard a lot about your mentorship program and I want to help out. It was Garth. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, who's this guy who's trying to mess things up? Kind of like the TED Talk thing. I didn't know it was a real opportunity I didn't know how lucky I was to have you reach out. So I didn't take it entirely seriously at the beginning.
But you did take it.
I did take the call.
Yeah.
And then we just ended up having a bunch of conversations. We hit it off immediately as soon as we started talking about bigger picture stuff. And, the organization eventually became what it is. We brought Lincoln on because of Garth's relationship with him. And through all the incredible work he's done at the Newark College Institute, it was kind of the perfect marriage that way. And just through a variety of seemingly random circumstances, we are now a community of, intellectually diverse people who understand different aspects of, culture and economy that allows for our students to draw upon different points of view, different sets of experiences in order to, design their own future and become the best versions of themselves. So in some ways, it was a totally random set of events that created Real World Academy. And in other ways, it was very poetic and made perfect sense.
Yeah.
So,
and the one, just to build on that point, I think what you've heard from all of our experiences is that the one word that's been consistent is passion. Actually, there's a couple of words that are consistent, but passion, drive, focus, right? And through those, just those three words, we're living our dreams, our visions for what we've wanted for ourselves.
yeah.
And then more importantly, for what we want for all the people that work with the Real World Academy and the students that come through the program.
Yeah.
We're living examples. We live it, we breathe it all the way through.
Yeah.
Because it started with your mentorship program through the hospital and then the school in Newark, and then you do your discussions, just kind of that energy, that organic energy. Then went to Domenico, exactly.
Yep.
And then Lincoln's been living this for 40 years because you're 85, right?
Yeah.
My birthday was last week, so yes, you're right.
But yeah, and so I just think it continues to build. And to your point, it actually seems organic, but it actually just, good energy kind of brings good energy. I think.
And I remember when you were 16, I remember we were at, one of our cousins' houses, and I took you aside, and I'm like, I know, this was after working in the project in Newark. I said, I know what I'm supposed to do with the rest of my life. And I explained everything to you. And that's when he had a lightning bolt in his head, and he really took things to the next level and bringing it outside of Newark. But we were trying to give people that did not have the same opportunities that we had, try to give them those serendipitous moments, those, TED Talk out of the blue opportunities, those call from a stranger that ends up managing as the CEO of a company that you started, when you were in high school, age, when you get a call from, this big school that wants you, but those serendipitous moments that not everybody gets, whether it's because of wealth, access, connections, whatever the reason is. So,
and I think it's deeper than that too. Just to discuss the motivation behind it.
Yeah.
Even coming up in high school, seeing friends of mine with crippling anxiety and depression and confusion, so much of that, in my opinion, so much of that has to do with not having, passion is too simple of a word for it, but not having some sense of self and some excitement for the future. And if we partake in, mentorship, holistic mentorship, and really dive into ourselves and find out who we are and what we want beyond the walls of academia, then that takes care of a lot of those problems and does make you a better student. It makes you a better professional. It makes you a better partner, friend, whatever. But there's just such a gap in the socio-emotional aspect of coming of age in our current culture and our current public education system that it's causing emotional problems.
And it all starts at home. You gotta have, none of this happens by chance. None of this is, you didn't wake up one day and all of a sudden now you are able to think this way. You're able to see the world this way. Our perspectives, our moral compass, our foundation for which we make every decision on is built by someone else, which is our parents, right? Whether they're there or not. Their absence builds it as well as their presence builds it. And so our parents are the single most influential force in our lives. And it stays that way because whatever they've done lingers with us even into adulthood. And so, which goes to my next question about, your parents, Domenico, when they realized that you were, whether you told them or they came to their own realization that you were going to music, what was the reaction from both?
Well, I think I'm just very lucky because my parents work in the white collar world. They're professionals. They're both doctors, but they respect the arts. And the key word there is respect. Because I went to a school where a lot of rich parents sent their creative kids, and the term trophy wife. It's a stupid cliche, but there's trophy children too. And so a lot of rich parents aren't respectful of the arts. If their kid wants to go in the arts, they're more so amused by it. So my parents were not amused by it. They legitimately respected music. They're both amateur musicians. So the conversations that I had with them in kind of that 12 to 15-year-old period when, I knew I wanted to do music my whole life, but, they wanted to set me up in that age bracket to, have a strong mindset and be able to deal with the realities of the world like you did with your son.
And what you didn't mention is they're both doctors, which traditionally is far away from music. But you said they had that background in music that allowed them to respect.
They respected music. They respect it. It's not a joke to them. It's not an amusement to them. And so they coached me at a very young age to take it seriously and treat it like a job, treat it like a business. My dad's a business owner. Well, he recently sold his business, but he was a business owner for decades. And so he instilled in me business ethic as it relates to art. And kind of like that no-nonsense mentality was instilled in me at a very formidable age to the point where they could kind of just let me run on autopilot. Like in my late teens up until now, they kind of just let me do my own thing because they programmed me at a very young age to be kind of this type A psychopath that I am now. So.
Same here. I'm a type A. Probably people will say that. That's amazing. That's amazing. So
that's why I say a lot of it's just good fortune and luck, because I don't want to prescribe too much. I don't want to sound too self-serving in how I describe this, because it was a lot of my parents just respecting it, also being tough on me, and also letting me do my own thing. We talked about that a little bit in the last podcast. I'm an only child. I need, perceived independence. I need to be able to make mistakes and mess up and fail. And I think that is another reason why, even coming out of art school, that I have a much stronger mental foundation to deal with.
Your resilience.
Because I've experienced failure at a very young age. I've been rejected by hundreds of labels, hundreds of publishing companies, hundreds of blogs. But guess what? After a lot of that failure, I got songs on the radio. Right. I got cuts with top 40 people. Right. I got a successful record label on my own in an artist project. I got millions of listeners online. So through all of that rejection and all that failure, I've developed resilience. Right. It might be perceived as type A insanity, but you need to have that kind of fortitude to be able to deal with the realities of the world, especially in an industry as competitive as entertainment.
And it's interesting because that's what the same thing I try to tell parents of young kids all the time, is that you can't go around doing everything for your children. They have whatever they can do, they should be allowed to do. And if they mess up, it's okay. This is a safe space for them to mess up. Yeah. You're going to be there. They ain't going to kill nobody. I mean, just let them go out there and try something. And if it don't work, it don't work. And you just, you're in paying for it anyway. So you might as well just, let them fail at it and try again. But parents, I find, that create bubbles now, especially new parents today, we create bubbles around our children because we don't want them to, get hurt in any way, emotional, psychological, physical. And so, now your kid's wrapped in bubble wrap from head to toe. And, you can't get nothing. And as soon as they get hurt, you're panicking. Then they learn how to panic, and then everybody's panicking. Right. And he only fell. Just breathe a little bit. Listen, I grew up in the 80s. Garth grew up before they were
40s.
With age comes wisdom, my friend.
But we were just, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Stranger Things, the show Stranger Things on Netflix, but it was so accurate to the time of us growing up in the 80s. I mean, it was truly like you would come home, do your schoolwork, and then you'd be gone for like 6 hours. You only told your parents you was going over at Garth's house, and then when they needed you, they called Garth's house, and you gotta track down your kids because now, of course, you're gonna stay at Garth's house. We don't end up going to Domenico's house. Then we end up at Anthony's house. Right. So my mom has to call each of our parents to figure out where I'm at, only to find out that it's time to eat, or time to come home because you got to eat, go to bed. Yeah. And so that was the life. Like, you just did not know, but it was just assumed that everything was okay. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, we're riding our bikes, we're falling, and, getting mud on our clothes and, doing make-believe stuff, and we're just having a great time in our own little, young bubble and getting in all kinds of mischief. Lord knows the police are looking for you and no one can find you, but they'll know that you'll be home in time to go to bed or whatever. Right. Yeah. But nowadays that no longer happens. It's interesting because the parents grew up at that time are now not allowing their kids to do those things. And, a lot of it is fear, a lot of it is the unknown. There's a lot of external factors that play into that. Media, society at large, does a lot of that. But that is what helped us be better. I mean, being thrown out there and had to figure it out is what allowed us to now be able to figure things out as adults. Being us to navigate relationships. I mean, you ran into people you didn't know. You had to figure them out. You had to, then you fell in and out of friendships all the time. First we were friends. Now we ain't talking to each other. Then some rumor happened in school. Then he's not borrowing my bike no more. He's got my Legos at his house. All that drama at 13 and 12 allows us to know how to develop relationships as we get older and get through relationships. We've already been through those things. But when you prevent your children from going through stuff, it denies them that ability to be resilient, because those are failures in some respects. You lose friends, you lose time, you lose whatever, and you just learn how to just deal with it. You come home crying, your mom's just like, all right, just get over it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, if you never go through those kind of failures, it's harder. It hits you so much harder as an adult. And I see that with students now where they're just afraid to fail. And I know that Ellen had talked about that, you're a 4.0 student, but yet you have not shown any risks taking, any kind of activity beyond that. So I don't know if you're able to fail and bounce back from that.
Right.
Because failure is part of life.
The other thing I'll say to that point is that you actually learn more from failure than you do from success.
Absolutely.
Or at least I should say that's my experience.
No, that is true.
Because you then take the next step, which is the most important step, which is, what do I have to do to make sure this doesn't happen again? Or what did I do or what didn't I do so that it netted this outcome?
I would be no good to y'all if I didn't have so many failures in my life, honestly. I've worked a lot of jobs and was fired from half of them, so.
I agree. No, absolutely.
No, but I went through a lot of challenges, and that's how now I'm able to say, I think we should think about this, because those are create what if scenarios.
Yeah.
I'm able to now say to you, what if this happens? What if this happens? Because either I've been through it myself or I know someone who has. Yeah. But if you, to your point, if you never went through any of those failures, you don't know what could possibly be. To be prepared for that, and you don't even know how to be prepared for the what if someone didn't bring it up to you too.
That's true.
Which makes me like just as great consultant, which I should be compensated a lot more better for. But we'll talk about that next podcast.
And another important lesson in failure is, guess what? Sometimes things don't work out. It's nobody's fault. There's not a clear explanation, but things go wrong and you got to deal with it.
Right.
So, you when you're confronted with that, you got to have enough resilience to be able to say, let's move on to the next thing.
That's right.
Even if I can't fully explain why this went wrong.
Right. So, Garth, I want to go to, now that your son is in school, and these two gentlemen, we all went to school, went to college, we all went to college, but now that your son is in college as a parent, what are the challenges were there any challenges while he's in college?
Yeah,
that you dealt with?
Sure.
And also, how can an organization like Real World Academy even help with those challenges?
So let me take the second question first, only because it sort of speaks to a larger issue. So with respect to how Real World Academy can help, is that once a student goes through our program, they never leave, right? They're alumni of Real World Academy. And our goal is to make sure that they now become a resource for other students that are either thinking about the program or coming to the program or so on and so forth. So they are always a member of the Real World Academy family, if you will. And the beautiful part about that is that not only do they continue to have access to the resources that are available for Real World Academy, but also Real World Academy has access to now yet another set of new resources from whatever that student brings, whether it's their, college life or their what they decided to major in or whatever profession they've decided to engage in. We can always reach out to them and sort of hear about and help understand how they might be a resource for us. So that's the first thing. But the other question that you asked regarding, what are some of the things that I've learned now that my son is now in college, is that, and this relates back to your other point, which is you got to let go. You have to be comfortable enough that at the point at which you have now given your son or daughter over to an institution, you have to say, I've left them. I've tried to teach them as much as I can to prepare them. They're never going to know everything, but you feel comfortable enough that you've tried to prepare them for whatever they need to negotiate decisions and make the decisions on their own based on their moral and ethical compass to be able to navigate many of the challenges they're going to face in college.
Hold that thought.
So don't be a helicopter parent.
Exactly.
But hold that thought. Anthony, when you were going through school, did your parents let go?
Yeah. So it's hard to believe. Like people always think, oh, you did so well in school. Your parents must have been really on you to get to, but they never really were on me to get like the certain grades. In college, I went to school in another state, in upstate New York at Cornell, and they were supportive to me emotionally, but they didn't have any control over my grades. They didn't have any control over what I did.
So what motivated you?
I wanted to be a doctor. That was my singular goal, was to be a doctor, no matter what it took to be a doctor. And that was the fire that was lit under me, that motivated me all those years, is a singular goal. It wasn't,
So they weren't helicopter parents. They weren't just saying, "Hey, how's your grades doing?" Just checking in. Like, they didn't drive up and make surprise visits.
No. Of course, they'd make visits and do things, but
surprise visits.
Not a surprise visit, but no. But they
didn't ask to see your grades.
No, I mean, unless I would tell them my grades, but they've never said like, oh, what did you get in that class? How did you,
Right.
it wasn't like that, even though it's easy to feel that like, oh, these pre-med students, their parents must be, all they want them to do is be a doctor. And that's a lot of pre-medical students are like that. But mine was an inner drive where they didn't need to. Now, maybe if I was less independently motivated, they would have been like that. I think they would have.
But did you call them up and say, "Hey, Mom, I need $20 every day"?
No, I mean, they paid for my meal plans, so I had food.
But did you call them up and make them feel as though you needed them? Did you ask them for help all the time? Did you reach out to them, and did you come off? Do you think you came off as less independent to them, or did you do your own thing and they let you do your own thing, and you just called an emergency situation?
The educational aspect was mine. There was no help at that point they could have given me, being two people who had bachelors in English. There was no help in science they could have given me. Whereas some pre-medical students, their parents are doctors. They're, like I said, they're all over them, getting them tutors. That was nothing they could have helped me in that. Did they help me with financially? Yes. Did they help me with lots of personal things? Yes. Did they, if I didn't know how to use a credit card, they would help me with that. If I needed,
did you
when I
call
was
them?
sick, I called them before I went to the doctor myself. I got sick.
But when that credit card, for example, did you call them, or did they say, "Hey, you need this credit card here"?
No, they got me a credit card. So in that respect, in the non-academic point, I was still probably operating at the level of a high school student throughout a lot of college, like most students. But those aspects, when they came up, my mom would be like, "Oh my God, we're going to do your laundry for you," like that kind of stuff.
Anthony's a mama's boy.
Right. Yeah. So your parents did the laundry for you.
Yeah, well, like my freshman year, but it's.
So you'll come home with a bag full of laundry, or she'll come up there?
No, they would, because I was in the marching band, so they would come up to see our shows, and they'd be like, let me just see what your laundry situation is. Let me help you with that.
Piled up waiting for them.
Anthony's mom would organize his whole dorm. She did. You had the snacks in there. And all that.
So he's not revealing that much. Let me drink some more tea.
Like I said, the academic portion was not there, but socially, I'll be the first one to say, like a lot of students, but like a lot of students, you're coddled by your parents' involvement in your life. You don't really know how to use a credit card per se. The money is not yours.
Right.
If you're independently wealthy at 18, oh my God, good for you. But
which is, and I'm only bringing this because it highlights our diversity, right? Number one. Mm-hmm. So 2, that tells others that we understand, we get it, because some of us have already been there, and this is what I've learned. Anthony's like, okay, yeah, I did that, but this is what I've learned from there, that X, Y, and Z. So thanks, Anthony. I want to go to Domenico really quick.
Okay.
So Domenico, your parents were hands off or hands on? Did they organize your closet for you in college?
No, no. Like I said, my parents were very hands-on during that early teenage period, where they kind of taught me how to be independent, both emotionally and, life skills and all that. When I got to New York, I mean, look, we have this big Italian family. Yeah. They're going to be involved.
They brought food to your apartment.
Oh, of course. I had the freezer stocked and all that.
They paid for your apartment.
Of course.
It's a family.
Yeah, of I would call them when I needed their help, in any circumstance. I remember one time in my apartment, my AC unit exploded. And there was just a water pressure seeping through my floor into my apartment. I didn't know how to turn off the water. I didn't know how. So I had to call the super or whatever, and my dad drove in at 2 a.m. from New Jersey. And
wow.
Yeah, that was a big deal. So yes, I did depend on them for sure, and still do, obviously.
Yeah.
But
in your academic involvement?
Nothing.
Nothing, right?
Nothing. Yeah.
But let's keep it real.
Yeah.
And what was your experience like? Did your parents?
No, absolutely no. So keep in mind, I left home at 17, and I said, I need y'all to sign on this dotted line because the military does not accept anyone without a parent signature if you're under 18. So my mom was like, I thought you were going to college. I said, listen, I worked my entire high school time. From 9th grade to 12th grade, I worked and went to school. I'm not doing that again for another 4 years. And my grades were to the point where I probably, even if I applied to a junior college, they wouldn't accept me. So we're not doing college because college is not right for me. We're going to join the military because I was in Germany at the time. And
where in Germany?
Frankfurt. And so I knew I couldn't live here because I wasn't trying to work on a military base because there ain't no jobs that I wanted there. So it was just like join the military. I mean, in option, you only get 3 options: military, work, or school. And 2 of those was not on the table for me. So I said, I'm going to the military. So my mom reluctantly signed, and they went and got my dad, because my dad was in Atlantic City at the time. They went and found him, and they had him sign. And I got shipped off to the military. And when I went to college, I still did not have them. I had to use, at the time, when you're under 23, you have to get your parents' information so you can get your financial aid. Well, I had went to community college first, and so I didn't need financial aid. I was on a unemployment insurance plan. So New Jersey pays for you when you're unemployment to go to college, and they'll pay for it. So I did that. And then when I transferred to a 4-year school, I wanted a dorm, but that's when I needed financial aid. And although my tuition was covered, I needed room for housing, and the people there said, well, you need your parents' information. I said, well, I don't have any parents. I'm estranged from them. And to some extent, I had a falling out with my parents. It was a long thing, but I really didn't have them to lean on, and I didn't have them to even put paperwork in. And I probably could have asked for them to do it, but I was at the point where, I'm not asking them for nothing because we're not really talking. So I had to figure out a way. And what I did was I said, let me talk to your supervisor. So I told the supervisor, I am homeless, which I essentially was at the time. I don't have any family support at all. This is what it is, and I need an opportunity. And my birthday is in October, and so I'm turning 23 anyway. Can we just make this happen? And so I had to do a whole bunch of steps. They had me fill out these 3 paperwork. I had to get a counselor to sign. I had to get a pastor. I had to get a friend, and I had to write up something. All 3. I wrote up all 3, and I had everybody sign it for me. And I sent it in. And again, you just have to make it work. You have to make a way. And I did that. And same thing I needed to get my MMRs, because whenever you dorm, you have to get your shots. Well, in the state of New Jersey, you can be excused from getting those shots if it's under religious. If it's against your religion. So, because I knew that law, I had drafted up this document. My dad is really big into law, so I learned a lot of these things from him. And so, I had a document that I was able to use. I changed all the names onto me, and I made it, and I handed it to the school nurse, and they did not allow me to use. I'm giving up all the secrets right now. I'm feeling all the tea. Somebody needs to take a sip for me.
Listen, I'm gonna close my ears about the no vaccination.
Exactly. I'm not proud. I shouldn't say I'm not proud. I am. You do what you gotta do.
Yeah,
right?
do what you had to do at that time.
And so, my friend who was a public health major at the time, we were dorming together. She was like, "That is not going to work. You gotta get it. They're gonna kick you out." I hand that paperwork. I got a notice in. I do not need to get a vaccination. So that is how I got over that. Now I have full health insurance, so I don't have to worry about those things. But my point is that I did not have any kind of family support, and I don't regret. I don't I don't hold that against my parents, number one, because my parents did not go to college. And when my mom went to junior college, but she did that on her own. Her mother did it on her own. So we just I think sometimes there isn't, when your parents don't go to college, they could be on both ends of the spectrum. They could say, I want you to go, and they pour all this into you. Or they say, listen, I figured it out. You got to figure it out. And I was on that end where you just got to figure it out. Yeah. But at the same time, that's how it's always been throughout my life, where my parents always put me in, I was always that one that just did it on my own. Much like, you were saying how you kind of made your own way throughout high school, and your parents was like, put their hands off. I mean, my parents tried to do things but I was just so adamant about, I don't want to do it that way, and I'm going to do it my own way. And so when you're doing your own way, it comes with a lot of failures and a lot of successes. Mm-hmm. And it was, in hindsight, it was very tough, very, very, very tough. I don't want to understate that at all. But I would not be where I am today if I had not gone through those moments. And so I'm able to understand students who did not have any support. And I understand, students who did have a lot of support, So
what's the number one thing you'd tell your 23-year-old self now?
It gets better.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same we have in the military too. When you're in boot camp, you get in there and you're like, oh my God, why did I make this decision? You ride with your back, your seat bag on, you're in sweats. You're like, oh my goodness, did I make the right decision? And you see other people who've been in there for a couple of weeks and they say, it gets better, shipmate, it gets better. And you're like, there's no way this is getting better. I'm just doing push-ups all day. I'm doing all this stuff. And what happens is that it does get better. You, get acclimated to just the situation. Everything that's new is always hard and stressful. Mm-hmm. But then, if you stick with it, if you're persistent, you realize that, oh, okay, some of it is just getting used to. Mm-hmm. Others is just like, you realize it's just not as bad as you thought it was coming in. And other parts is like, you understand it better. And so the key to many things is understanding. Seek understanding in all things. Because once you understand why it's going this way, you say, oh, okay, now you kind of accept it and you're able to deal with it. Mm-hmm. A lot of people can't deal with things because they don't understand why it's happening. And so that, I think for 23, you just say, it gets better. Mm-hmm. That's what I would say.
Yeah, it's powerful.
But, it's interesting how, again, we all came here, and even for parents, and that's why I kind of stopped everyone about the parents piece, or I wanted to ask you about the parents piece and didn't want to go too far into it. Because from my experience of working with college students, one, we don't have to engage parents, right? Because they're college students, and we use that to our advantage, that we don't have to deal with the parents, because the parents are a hassle to deal with. So we just lean on the fact that they're college students, so we can just don't have to work with them. But now that Real World Academy also deals with high school students, we do have to engage parents, and we do have to work with parents. But one of the things that I'm dealing with parents at the college level is that you have parents that are totally engaged, similar to even Domenico and Anthony's parents are really like over them, right? Saying, okay, I can, solving the problems that come up. Then you have parents that are totally not there, which like mine. And then you have some parents that come in the middle, like you, Garth, who said, I'm there, but I'm really like at a distance, right?
Right.
And then so when I talked to some parents, I was going through the list of what your student needs while they're in college. If they're dorming, a lot of people don't realize, like, you need something like bed sheets, right? You need towels. Your child does whatever's in your linen closet at home, your child needs that in college. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Some parents can't wait for their kids to go off to college, sell the house, move into an RV, and then they're traveling the country, right? Yep. And so to some extent, you're saying, I'm that parent, say, listen, they're on their own, do whatever you got to do. But that's not necessarily the best way either, because especially if you didn't prepare your children, a lot of times when I'm talking to parents, they did not allow their children in the kitchen growing up. They didn't allow their children in the laundry room growing up. So now their child doesn't know how to cook for themselves, don't know how to clean up after themselves. Yeah. There's a lot of things they just did not have to do as a child growing up that now they have to do as a quote unquote adult. And when you packed up everything and want to be this, well, you got it now, it doesn't work. So it's okay to want your child to be independent, but you have to set them up for them to be independent. Mm-hmm. You can't just say, well, now you're an adult, you're on your own. And this goes to parents even when outside of college. When your child turn 18 and they graduate high school, a lot of parents are like, okay, you on a 6-month timeline. Now you got to be out of here. But how do you put your child into a situation that they're not prepared for? Right. And we realize that a lot of students are really not prepared for the real world. They're not prepared to be independent.
Do we have programming for this?
Absolutely, absolutely. We do our best to work with the student, but here's the problem: at 18. There's only but so much we can do. Now, especially when they're in college, because we're centralized in one place, but they're in colleges all around the country, all around the world. Mm-hmm. If I only see them once or twice a year, that's not enough for me to kind of teach them these things. Mm-hmm. So working with the high school students definitely gives us an advantage because they're kind of like, they're stationary, right? They're in the same high school, they're in the same town. We can constantly work with them. But when they're out of high school, it's very difficult. So our goal right now is to kind of educate the parents of the high school students so they can at least start, if they haven't done it already, start this process of getting your children to know of adulting, as Garth, you'd call it, adulting early on. And even our program teaches some sort of adulting to high school students early on so that when they get to college and the parent does decide to be out, they're not wondering, what do I do? Yeah.
And there are two things that I want to raise on that. The first is regarding adulting, just because it is somewhat of a relatively new term, believe it or not. Back in the Stone Age, we used to call it home economics.
Right.
That's true. Okay. But what we're finding is that when students enter the workforce and their very first day, there's a bunch of forms they have to fill out, everything from their healthcare choices to what their 401k, whether or not they want to enroll, life insurance, all those kinds of things that they don't know how to fill. I've had young people come up to me as who I've hired and ask me my advice on what they should invest in their 401k, and I'm like, talk to your parents. I'm not giving you that kind of.
Listen, I'm a doctor, and I don't even know which health insurance plan sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
They're so complicated.
Yeah. Or to your point, Lincoln, even as they go into this new environment of college, how to iron a shirt,
right?
How to, what creases should be. Women's shirts are very different than men's shirts.
When I was in the military, they didn't know how to. A lot of students, people did not know how to wash clothes.
Wash clothes, exactly.
We used to get the whites come out, and you had to iron them. The smell of the Clorox was just so overwhelming. I think I might have traces of cancer now because I smelled so much of it just ironing my clothes.
That's right.
Like, who washed these clothes? They didn't have a clue.
No, not a clue at all. Yeah. Separate whites from colors. I mean, all the what are some basic things. So so those are the kinds of things that we are now engaging in classes as well, and it's really, really important. The other thing is, like you said, just in terms of the students feeling a sense of comfort and familiarity, right? One of the other things, and I don't want to necessarily just tout Real World Academy, but it's important that people know what we're doing. We have student mentors that have gone to different colleges throughout the country. So hopefully, if another one of our potential applicants or our students that are going through the program now are interested in what's it like at Delaware State, what's it like at Harvard, what's it like at Northeastern, we actually have students, who just graduated or graduated not too long ago, to be able to help them understand this environment is different. Because I can tell you, Northeastern is very different than a Yale. Yale is very different than Cornell, right? And even some of the, what's community college like, right? A lot of times, I had a conversation with parents when I was looking at a school for my son, and I said, if you had to do all over again, what would you do? And his kids went through some really prominent schools down in DC, and he said, honestly, what I would do is I would put my kids into community college for the first 2 years.
I agree.
I've heard that a lot.
Right?
I agree.
Because guess what? At the end of the day, they go the 2 years. They now are more clear. They're more mature. They've had
a win-win.
They've had a seasoning.
And then you go get the degree.
And then you transfer to the school of your choice. And then you can get the quote unquote, because no one really cares where you entered. They only care where you finish.
Right. And just as a side note, in New Jersey, for those who live in New Jersey who's listening and live in New Jersey. In New Jersey, if you graduate with an associate degree, you are automatically given junior status in a 4-year college university.
That's right.
Oh, I didn't know that.
In the state of New Jersey. I don't know how it is in other states, but sometimes other states, some colleges will only accept a year's worth of credits from your associate degree. In New Jersey, the law is that they have to accept all the credits so that you come into your 4-year as a junior.
Fabulous.
Yeah, they put a cap on it in New York. I know that. But yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for coming out. I think we covered a lot in this episode already. And thanks to everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Keeping It Real podcast by Real World Academy. If you're a student looking for a mentor or a parent looking to help your kid design a happy life and a successful career, visit our website at realworldacademy.org and subscribe to us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and wherever you listen to podcasts to hear more exclusive content on how to design your future.